The sun sank low over the Pacific, painting the San Francisco skyline in gold and crimson. The sea breeze carried the scent of salt, rust, and forgotten stories. Standing on the crumbling pier at Fort Point, archaeologist Dr. Elena Cruz adjusted her recorder and spoke into it for the last time that day. Day 73 of the excavation beneath the bay, she said softly, her voice trembling with fatigue. Radar imaging confirms a massive submerged structure extending 3 miles west of Alcatraz. Locals claim it's a fault anomaly, but the architecture, it looks man-made. Her assistant, Jason Lee, approached with a worried look. Elena, the divers are refusing to go down again tonight. They say the currents are wrong and the instruments keep glitching. Elena frowned. Wrong how? They're hearing a broken bar voices, he said, hesitant. Like whispers through the comms. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Pressure distortion. It's the trench. Jason hesitated before adding. One of them said the voice called his name. Elena turned toward the dark expanse of the bay. Get some rest, Jason. We dive at dawn. That night, fog rolled over the Golden Gate like a living thing. The city lights flickered under its weight, and the sound of foghorns echoed like mournful warnings. Elena stayed behind in her tent, studying sonar maps. The readings were impossible, asymmetrical patterns buried beneath layers of silt, far too geometric to be natural. She zoomed in on one section that looked like an arcade of concentric circles, a walls, perhaps, or a plaza. Her heart raced. It's a city, she whispered, an entire city under the bay. The next morning, she and Jason suited up, joining 2 divers on the research vessel Nereid. The fog still clung to the water. Elena double-checked the coordinates before slipping beneath the surface. At 50 feet, the world turned silent except for the hiss of oxygen. Sunlight filtered weakly through the murk. Then, as they descended deeper, shapes began to appear, massive stone blocks overgrown with coral, carved columns half buried in sand, archways crusted with barnacles. Elena's breath caught. It's real. Her flashlight swept over an engraved wall, revealing a series of unfamiliar symbols, a mix of Spanish letters and something older, almost runic. She pressed her gloved hand against the stone, feeling grooves too deliberate to be erosion. Jason's voice crackled through the comms. Dr. Cruz, I think I found something. She swam toward him. He hovered near what looked like a collapsed tower. Through the shattered window, they saw a figure, a human-shaped, frozen in sediment, eyes hollow and skin stretched like parchment. Jesus, Jason muttered. Is that a question mark? Before he could finish, the current shifted violently. Their lights flickered. A low hum vibrated through the water, deep and resonant, like a voice murmuring in another language. Elena, Jason shouted, we're losing connection. Then everything went dark. When Elena awoke, she was on the deck of the Nereid, coughing up seawater. Jason hovered over her, pale and shaken. You blacked out, he said. Your oxygen tank malfunctioned. We almost lost you. She sat up, disoriented. The runes say, did we get footage? He shook his head. All the data's corrupted, like it never happened. But Elena noticed something on her wrist, a thin, metallic bracelet she didn't remember wearing. It was etched with the same strange symbols she'd seen on the wall. Where did this come from? She whispered. Jason's eyes widened. You didn't have that before. Over the next week, Elena became obsessed. She returned to the site every day, but each dive yielded nothing. The sun hour blank, the ruins gone as if they'd sunk deeper overnight. Her colleagues began to whisper that she was hallucinating from exhaustion. But Elena couldn't shake the images burned into her mind, the arches, the carvings, the whispering current. She began researching San Francisco's earliest history, long before it was called by that name. That's when she found a passage in a 1776 missionary's journal describing a great city that sank into the sea before our arrival, swallowed by God for its pride. The friar had called it Francisco Perdido, the lost Francisco. The next morning, she received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the line was low, accented, And strange, you found what should remain buried. It said, the city remembers. Then the line went dead. That night, Elena dreamt of water flooding the streets of a shining city, golden domes and marble towers collapsing under roaring waves. People ran, crying out in a language she somehow understood. On a tall pedestal stood a figure cloaked in silver, raising a hand to the sky as lightning split the clouds. When she awoke, her heart was pounding, and the bracelet on her wrist was glowing faintly blue. She called Jason immediately. "Meet me at the pier. I think I know what happened." He hesitated. "Elena, maybe you need a break. You haven't slept." "Just meet me," she insisted. By dawn, the two were back aboard the Nereid. The fog was thicker than ever, muffling the city's sounds. Elena's hands shook as she adjusted her equipment. "This city wasn't destroyed by an earthquake," she said. "It was sacrificed. The energy readings we've been seeing, it's not geological, it's something else." Jason frowned. "You're saying San Francisco was built on top of another city?" "No," she said softly. "It is that city, reborn, layer by layer." Before he could respond, the sonar alarm began to beep wildly. The monitor lit up with the massive shape moving beneath them, a circular, pulsing. "Is that a?" Jason began. Elena didn't wait. She dove. The current dragged her downward faster than before, but she didn't resist. The bracelet glowed brighter, guiding her through the darkness. When she opened her eyes again, the ruins were there, illuminated in ghostly blue light. The city had returned. She swam through empty streets lined with statues and broken fountains. At the center stood a great plaza, dominated by a cracked obelisk. On its surface were carvings, depictions of men raising walls against the sea, of stars falling, of a great flood swallowing everything. "Elena," Jason's voice came through faintly. "You're too deep. You need Towa." His voice cut off. The water around her shimmered. The carvings began to glow. She turned, and the figure from her dream appeared, tall, draped in flowing robes that trickled like water, face hidden by a hood. "You wear the mark of the lost," the figure said in a voice that echoed in her mind. Elena floated motionless, unable to speak. "This city was once the jewel of the coast," it continued. "Its people sought to master the sea, to bind its power beneath their streets. But the ocean remembers no master. When pride drowned mercy, the waters rose, and the city was buried, forgotten by all but the tide." Elena finally found her voice. "Why show me this?" "Because the memory stirs again. Your world repeats our sins, digging, building, taking. You have awakened what sleeps." The obelisk cracked, releasing a pulse of light that shook the water. Elena screamed as images flooded her mind. Skyscrapers crumbling, the Bay Bridge collapsing, waves swallowing the city once more. She tried to swim upward, but invisible currents held her in place. The figure raised its hand. "One must remain as guardian, or the sea will claim everything again." Her lungs burned. "Why me?" "Because you heard the call." The light flared blindingly, and everything went black. Jason woke up in the decompression chamber, coughing. Divers surrounded him, pulling off his mask. "Where's Dr. Cruz?" one shouted. He looked around mildly. "She was right behind me." The water exploded upward near the boat, sending a shockwave through the air. Then it stilled. The bracelet that had been on Elena's wrist floated to the surface, dark and cold. A month later, Jason presented his findings to the university. There was no evidence of a lost city, no sonar data, no recordings. All logs had been erased. The official report blamed equipment failure and diver disorientation. But Jason couldn't forget what he saw in that final dive, the flicker of light in the deep, the faint outline of towers beneath the waves. He began to dream too, of a city glowing under the sea, of Elena standing on its streets, calm and unafraid, the water shimmering around her like glass. He started going back to the pier at night, staring out at the fog. Sometimes he thought he heard her voice in the surf, whispering in a language he couldn't understand. Then one morning, as the sun rose over the bay, the fog cleared for just a moment. Jason froze. Out on the water, Beneath the waves, he saw the faint outline of buildings, streets, domes glimmering under the surface, stretching for miles. The lost city of Francisco, and standing atop its highest tower was a figure watching him. Elena, her eyes glowing like the deep sea, her hand raised in silent warning. The fog closed in again, swallowing everything. The city vanished, but those who live near the Bast still tell stories. They say that on certain nights, when the fog is heavy and the tides are low, you can hear church bells ringing faintly beneath the water, echoes of a city that refused to die. Fishermen claim to see lights flickering deep below, moving like lanterns through the ruins. Some say it's just seismic gas, others say it's ghosts, but every now and then, a diver goes missing. Their last words over the radio always the same: "I see the tower's a broken bar, they're still standing." And when the tide rolls back in, the waves whisper softly against the shore, carrying a single name through the mist, a name lost to history, but remembered by the sea. Francisco.